right, guys, I want to take a look at one of the most important things on this journey, and that is the shift from romance to awareness. Because let's face it, guys, at first it feels like romance. The connection's intense, it's magnetic, it's almost unreal, and you feel seen and understood and drawn in, and you're having all these downloads, and the synchronicities are hitting you all the time, and you're seeing the numbers and all this stuff. And naturally you think, this is it. This is love. But then something starts to change. The emotions deepen, the triggers begin, and the clarity starts to come in. And suddenly it doesn't feel like romance anymore. It feels like something else entirely, something different, something that is confronting, something awakening. And if you've ever experienced this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because let's start with the beginning. Because we all know what starts as romance, or feels like it's something that could be. That part really does matter. And for many people, the connection enters through the lens of romance, attraction, chemistry, desire. And it feels exciting. It feels familiar. It's easy to understand. But for others, it doesn't even get that far. Maybe it was just conversations, moments, an unspoken understanding, and maybe it never became a relationship at all. And that can be confusing because you think, if nothing really happened, why does this affect me this deeply? But here's the truth, guys. The depth of connection is not defined by how far it goes externally. It's really defined by what it activates internally. So, whether this was a full relationship or something that never fully materialized, that does not make the connection any less real or any less significant. Because there's a moment where things begin to change, and it's subtle at first, but it's definitely undeniable. You start to feel more emotional than usual. You're more aware of your reactions. You're more affected by their presence and their absence of it, both of them. And this is where people get confused because it no longer feels like just a connection. It feels like it's doing something to you. Those highs really feel even higher. The lows feel even deeper into like you're going into the descent, and suddenly you're not just experiencing them, you're experiencing yourself. So I want to talk about where the mirror replaces the fantasy, because this is where romance begins to dissolve. And it's not because the connection wasn't real, but because it was never only romantic. And for some, it wasn't romantic at all. And it may have looked small on the outside, but it feels massive on the inside. And that's because what was happening was never about the form of the connection. It was about the impact of it. You don't need years. You don't need labels. You don't even need a relationship for something to change you. And it feels like loss, because this shift feels like something is being taken away from you. If you're anything like me, I've said it probably 9 billion times at this point. This is not what I prayed for. you know, but the excitement leaves, the ease leaves, the fantasy leaves, and you find yourself thinking, what happened to how it used to feel? But nothing was lost. Something was revealed. And the connection didn't disappear, it just deepened. It went from surface level romance to an internal awareness. And I think I've said it multiple times on this journey and in my videos, guys, this is spiritual way before it's ever physical. And to be honest with you, the physical part of it is not your job. It really isn't. This is where the real purpose starts to come into focus. Because now it's not about the relationship, it's about your awareness. And you begin to notice, your triggers, your emotional responses, your patterns in connection. And instead of asking, what are they doing? You begin asking, what is this showing me? And that question, guys, it changes everything. Because at the beginning, there's attachment. It's not love, guys. It is a full-blown attachment. It's a pull towards them, a focus on the connection. But as your awareness grows, all of that shifts. And you begin to observe instead of reacting, reflecting instead of chasing after them. And you begin to understand instead of assume. So slowly, your focus moves from them back to you. And this is where your power returns. The shift from romance to awareness is not the end of the connection, guys. It's the beginning of understanding it. Because this was never just about love. Not in the way that you thought. It was more about the awakening. So if the connection no longer feels like it did in the beginning, that doesn't mean something went wrong. It means something went deeper. And if you've ever questioned your experience, because I know I have, because it didn't turn into something tangible, or because it never went anywhere, understand this. It went somewhere. It went inward. And it shifted your awareness, and it revealed parts of you. It changed how you see yourself and the connection. And that is what makes it meaningful. Not the outcome, but the awakening that it has created in you. Because this is not only shifting your awareness to the world, when it shifts your awareness to yourself, your relationship patterns change. You're going to start choosing differently. And I mean, I still, to this day, I still try to move on. I still try to, I'm learning from other people, but at the same time, there is no fully moving on because there's no one who matches my energy, if that makes sense. They match your energy, yes, that's your mirror. But moving on is going to be difficult. And I will not lie to anybody about that. But if this resonated with you, I want you guys to reflect on this. What has this connection shown you about yourself? Not about them, but about you. Because that shift from focusing on them to understanding yourself, that's where everything's going to begin to change for you. So I will see you guys in the next video.